In the world of sim racing, there are no physical boundaries. And this series is a fantastic example of that. 60 plus racing adventures. All of our competitors, seasoned and experienced. And they love racing together here on iRacing. But they love racing hard, and they are fiercely competitive drivers just like anyone else on the service. This is their season finale at Road America. We're looking forward to two fantastic races here in 60 plus racing adventures. I'm David Haynes, and alongside me is going to be Nolan Rempel for two races tonight on RaceSpotTV. Cars are forming up on the grid, and Nolan, those cars are Pro Mazda open wheelers.
Indeed they are, and Pro Mazda open wheelers, let me tell you, they're some of the more exciting open wheel racing you can see here on the service. The cars are nice and they're not fast, but they're not slow either. They're a nice car you can kind of get into. I'd say it's the first step you should go to right after the skippies. So to see a bunch of, these seasoned drivers that really like racing together, it's really good to see, these guys getting into these nice lightweight cars for some high-speed action.
Yep, no doubt. And we've got a fantastic grid tonight. You see them all lining up there. 25 to 30 cars was typical here in 60 plus racing adventures, but we're looking at as many as 35 drivers going to take the start here in race 1. So let's have a look at that grid for race 1 as they're lined up right now behind the Porsche safety car. So on pole position, looks like it's going to be Stefan Röstgen, and alongside him Jos van der Ven, two long-time rivals in this series. Row behind is Paul Stump and Mark Robertson, and behind that is L. Leroy Coppage and Leif Hellberg. John Morgan in 7th, and 8th place is Russ Addy. 9th on the grid for race 1, that's going to be Bill Lawrence. 10th is going to be John Unsby. 11th is Richard Coulomb, and 12th is Bruce Granham.
Down at 13th place, we've got Franz Brink with David Riley right beside him in 14th place. Bob Kern and Kenneth Baldwin in 15th and 16th. Paolo Bonacera in 17th place with Roberto De Filippis in 18th place. Kenneth Doomer in 19th with Joe Martin in 20th. Gerard Floresian in 21st place with Louis Cannell in 22nd. Fred McIntosh in 23rd with Mark Lisson in 24th.
25th place, Carl Bogle. 26th, Graham Healy. 27th, Anthony Jackson. 28th, from Team Italian Turtles, is Gianni Rispaldo. 29th, Jack Turner. 30th is going to be Richard Varley. 31st is Bill McCaw. PJ Selly has 32nd position. So we get towards the end of the grid. 33rd, Ralph Camera. 34th, Wally Molesby. 35th, going to be John Fletcher. Well, this is going to be an interesting race, I think, Nolan, because Road America has quite a few long straights, and this is a car with some big wings on it, but not a whole heap of horsepower on it. Slipstreaming and the draft always pretty powerful in these cars wherever they go, but now there's 2-3 straights where we're going to definitely see it in effect in this race. If you're up the front, you're going to need to make a big jump of more than 1.5 seconds to be able to break the toe to the cars behind. Otherwise, it's going to be single file, then 2 wide racing. Tough for anyone to break away, I think.
Absolutely, and you were talking about how we have 3 major straights basically these guys need to look out for, and those straights are of course turn 14 down the start-finish straight to turn 1. You've got the straight from turns 3 down to 5 through the Moraine Sweep, and then the very infamous turn 11 to 12 straight from the Kink all the way down to Canada Corner. Those are the 3 long straights to take care of for these guys here, and with the slipstream being so incredibly powerful in these cars, it would not surprise me if we saw huge runs coming off of those tighter corners down these extra long straights, and it should provide us with some very, very exciting action.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, those all lead into some of our biggest overtaking spots. They lead into some pretty hard braking zones. One of them is, of course, down here at Canada Corner, where no doubt we'll see some passing moves done. We'll see some action throughout this race. It's going to be 18 laps of racing in race 1. I think that is going to be some pretty fast-paced, jam-packed action. And you can just look at that field lining up behind the safety car and you know we are going to get rolling very soon. This is the final sector of the course, and then the safety car peels away, and there's that tricky run up the hill that really punishes if you didn't get a good drive out the final corner. That's always one to look out for.
It's going to be absolutely crucial for drivers, especially in the opening laps, to get good drives off of turn 14. It is, of course, the longest straight on the track. It'll be very, very difficult for them to break the toe, especially on the famous start-finish straight.
So into the pit entry comes our pace car. The field lines up Rostjan and Jos van der Ven on the front row for 18 laps at Road America. Let's go racing, and that's a very, very good jump from Stefan Rostjan. Jos van der Ven slots in line. Paul Stump and Mark Robertson battle over third place. The flagman furiously waves his green flag as we head down into turn 1. I hope it's clean. We'll see very, very shortly. 35 Pro Mazda open wheel racing cars stream through turn 1, and I think the jump that Stefan Rostjan has made has done a good job of spreading out the field. It means nothing too crazy into the first couple of corners, and the racing begins in earnest. Jos van der Ven is not letting Stefan Rostjan get away in the lead. Immediately right into that slipstream on the long run down towards turn 5.
He is closing mighty quickly as the end of the braking zone. Not going to look for it yet. He's going to be nice and patient here. Might try something if he can get close enough coming down to Canada corner. We'll have to see. Paul Stump right behind them, a little bit twitchy on the exit of the exit curbing there of turn number 5 as they come around through these 90-degree bends. Down now through, that is turn number 7, and down the hurry downs towards turn number 8.
Indeed. Inside curb here can be a little bit tricky, can upset these open wheeler cars, but then through the long carousel here we're going to see a little bit of too wide action, trying to hang it around the outside behind Leif Hellberg is going to be, I missed it on time, is green Russ Addy potentially, but here we go, it'll sorted itself out before the kick, pretty well flat out in these cars with a little bit of downforce, means you can carry the speed all the way down towards Canada corner, and you're going to see a potential overtaking move here. You can see that slipstream in effect, really bottling up all the cars behind. Number 2 of Leif Hellberg, Ross Addy and John Morgan are those cars behind.
And Hellberg continuing to hold off Ross Addy in that 1-1-1 machine down in the turn 14. This is where we might see a move out here for that 7th place. As Ross going to try to get a good run. Everybody's covering that inside line as they come over the hill towards the start-finish line. And it will be Stefan Roskin, your pole sitter, to lead lap number 1 ahead of Jos van der Ven, though that might not be for long here if he has anything to say about it.
Yeah, van der Ven right underneath his rear wing, less than 2 tenths behind him, and definitely locked in that slipstream. Paul Stump in 3rd is within touch of the leaders, so is Mark Robertson and Leroy Coppedge behind. Rostjan, he's got to be looking in his mirrors at his rival behind, thinking, is he going to make a move just yet, or is he going to ride along? And we're riding along on board the nose of Jos van der Ven, looking forward at that Mazda rear wing, and he thought for a moment there about sending it down the inside and lifted it out of the throttle. Did not make the move and stays in line, and that let Paul Stump, Mark Robertson and the others behind catch up a little bit as well. Change for position behind Leif Hellberg there as John Unsby's gained 2 positions, so he is on a charge right now in the number 61 car, and plenty of other little battles behind as well. Strong grid, strong slipstream, giving us plenty of little battle packs in the early goings of this 18-lap race.
And Russ Addy, when John Unsby went around him, that was thanks to Addy getting just a little bit loose coming off of turn number 5, and it allowed for both him and John Morgan to go through. So Russ Addy had a little bit of a moment, but he certainly recovered it nicely. He's going to be trying to charge back and maybe take that spot back and come down to Canada corner.
No damage to the car, it doesn't look like. Plenty of racing still to go. It can make those spots back up. Rostjan still with van der Ven, riding along, not making the move. And it's starting to form a little bit of a conga line behind, because every time van der Ven rolls out of the throttle down the long straights, Paul Stump behind closes up a little further and drags along Mark Robertson and Leroy Coppedge with it. Look there at van der Ven trying to break the draft because Stefan Rostjan appears to be dropping down my timing screen just a little bit. Van de Ven definitely leading the race at this point. Stefan Rostjan down into 10th. What's gone on for our pole sitter?
Well, I'll tell you what went on. He went completely off at turn 14. Overdrove it on the exit, went clean off the track. Replay up on your screens now. Watch, he got on the exit curbs, got really loose, had to back out of that one, almost lost it. Good job on Rosgan to keep it out of the concrete barriers there. And that has allowed Van de Ven into the lead. And Rosati has just gone off as well out of turn number 3, and he's into the tire barriers.
So some damage on the 111 car there by the looks of it. Stefan Rostjan was very lucky to avoid any damage in his little rodeo off-road attempt. Here's our replay of what's happened there. Got in a little bit hot, slide in the middle of the corner, managed to deal with that in turn 1. It's down into turn 3 that the incident happened. And what happens here, is it just a case of 2 tires on the grass? It's a case of almost all the tires on the grass on the exit. You try to put the power down on slick tires out there, you're going to have no grip, and that sent him around into the barriers. Most of the damage just on that front wing.
You know, it's a very common mistake to make in these cars. You know, you try to drive it a little too much through the corners, and it's an easy mistake to make into these cars as well. You know, the wings are huge, and that can give you some massive cornering speed considering the horsepower, but you need to remember that even these cars, they do still have a limit, and you really need to respect that limit, because it is very easy for these cars to just snap around on you.
So now our leader, Jos van de Ven. Paul Stump does not want him to stay that way. Mark Robertson in the mix as well up front. Van de Ven, though, his strategy of just sitting in line behind Rostjan has paid benefits eventually as the pressure has gotten to his rival. Now Van de Ven, the Dutchman, leads, and Mark Robertson immediately behind. Paul Stump in the delicious-looking milk-flavoured car in third. Coppage for company in 4th. The top 2 look like a breakaway is almost possible, and it's a big train from 3rd on down. We're going to have a move into turn 1. We just
And Mark Robertson up into the lead of this race. Van de Ven down into 2nd place. Now, will he try to make something down into turn 3? Not quite sure if he will. He'll probably just stay there where he is right now. Might try to make a look into turn 5. We'll have to see how this one plays out. And behind them, Paul Stump and Kopidage beginning to close in as well. Robertson, he's leading this race so far. I'm pretty sure it might not stay that way for long.
Yeah, from 4th on the grid into the lead of the race. Robertson, one of our big movers, up 3 positions, but now it's only going to be up 2 because down the inside into 5 comes Jos van de Ven. Classic move, gets the power down well, but he's going to try and cover it up the hill and underneath the bridge. Job done into the lead for now, and it's probably towards the end of the race, but he pushes very, very wide. They're going to be checked up nearly 3 wide as well. Jos van de Ven, again, just another driver overdriving it a little bit into the corners. They're stacked up 3 wide through the hurry downs. Leif Hellberg trying to take advantage there. So is John Unsby. So is Bill Lawrence in the mix there as well. Van de Ven, his rejoin has stacked up a lot of the field, and it's all action on lap 4.
It's all gone wrong for Jos van de Ven, who's fallen back now into 4th place, desperately trying to fend off Leroy Kopidage as they come down through the kink. Kopidage is going to be looking to put him down another spot now into 5th place, though. He's going to look for it coming down to the can in the corner. Really make the move, though. He's going to slot back in line. That's going to really check everybody up here as they come down to the can in the corner. Will there be any contact? So close, but not quite.
So big changes up front. Robertson and Paul Stump now in 1st and 2nd, trying to make a little bit of a breakaway, but then from 3rd on down, this is your battle, and that might matter in the championship. We'll definitely talk about that more in race 2. Leif Hellberg leading Jos van de Ven from Koppich from Morgan. This is a battle over 3rd place, and look at them, 10 cars in a train coming down the start-finish line, and in that train is Stefan Rostjan in 8th place. Van de Ven going to look to take 3rd position as a car rejoins from the pits, makes it nearly 4 wide, nearly 3 wide in the pack there as well. So we said the slipstream very powerful for these kind of cars at this circuit. It is proving to be even more so than I expected.
And that is just the nature of these cars. They really like to get into the draft and then just pull themselves along. And Hellberg, he's going to try to be getting back on Van de Ven's case here to get that spot back and push himself back up into a podium spot. But Van de Ven's looking to cover as they come down into turn number 5. He's going to make a lunge for it, but not quite going to get there. He's Mike Pounce on the exit here. Will Van de Ven try to cover? No, because that number 2 car not going to go for the position just yet.
Behind that, Rostjan and Unsby. Rostjan tries to make the move into 5, could not get it done, couldn't carry the momentum on the inside. On the outside line, Unsby was too strong, but Rostjan now in the same pack as his fellow front row starter in Jos Van de Ven. Not far behind and looking to just leapfrog a couple of positions, get up there, try to score some points in race 1. So our top 12 almost inseparable in one shot here. Up front, it's Robertson and Stump, who have just 1.5 seconds ahead of Jos Van de Ven, who is leading that conga line of 10 cars. Paul Stump thinking about a move into Canada corner, backs out of it this time. It's a swap behind potentially. Hellberg and Coppedge fighting over 4th place. Jos Van de Ven's going to hold on to 3rd for the moment, I think, but there is battles for everyone in the top 15 here, side by side. Unsby on the inside, we see there. Rostjan also trying to grab a spot through the final corner. It's where he pushed wide and lost the lead, and he runs too wide through the final corner. We're almost going to be too wide, too deep here. They are fighting tooth and nail over every position, and we've still got, 13 laps to go.
And we're going to have a move for the lead up front as well. Paul Stump up into the lead, takes it away from Mark Robinson, but Robinson looking to fight back as they come down to turn number 3, making the look into 3. Not going to be there though. He's going to get back in line. Do you think he can try to make it down to the turn number 5? If he gets a good drive, he might be able to take that lead back.
Battling between the two of them has checked them up a little bit. Jos Van de Ven's now in the slipstream, so is Leif Hellberg. It's almost formed up a train where the remaining train has caught 1 and 2. Robertson stays in line. Paul Stump holds on to the lead, but Jos Van de Ven, after we saw him run off the road as well, suddenly he's back within a second of the race lead. He hasn't given up, and he's trying to shake some of the rivals behind, including his title rival, Stefan Rostjan.
And Coppedge has just gone off behind them. I think there may have been contact. Nope, there was not. It was his own mistake. Overdrove in on the exit of, I believe that was turn number 7. Went into the grass, came back on, and nearly wiped out Franz Brink as he came back on track.
Got our replay from on board of what happened, and whoa, almost high-sided the car a little bit on that curb on the exit. That's where he got pretty loose. We've seen a couple of people get caught out by that corner. Certainly not hard to do because you come over the crest and can't really see the apex until you're right on it. Got to have a lot of knowledge of the track, a lot of belief in yourself. There's a lap car that's now come between the top 3 and the cars behind. So this might give Stump, Robertson and Van de Ven an opportunity to make a little bit of a breakaway. I don't think it's worked though. Leif Hellberg in the black and white car has cut right through as well. We've had a little incident behind that. Coppedge has had a couple of more problems as well. Russ Addy's also dropped down the order. What do you see, Nolan?
I saw Josh Morgan just put himself into the concrete barriers on the exit of turn number, at the exit of Canada corner actually, and he was trying to get around the lap car of Marc Lezon. Overdrove it on the exit of Canada corner and went into the concrete barrier, and there is no longer a front wing on that car, so he's going to have to bring it back to the pits, and I think it's safe to say he's out of contention for this one in race number 1.
Yep, so here's a replay of that one. I did mention that piece of lap traffic trying to get safely out of everyone's way. Just been spooked a little bit on the exit, sent it around from that curbing, and it has clean taken the front wing off that car. John Morgan is in the pit lane now, but the battle continues for the lead, and we saw a little bit of it. Paul Stump is trying to go down the inside of Mark Robertson into turn 5, and he gets it done. Now Jos Van de Ven, he gets on the grass, I should say. Van de Ven's the one with the biggest run. Robertson grabs the position back. Paul Stump couldn't get it done, drove it in too hot. Van de Ven stays in 3rd. Leif Hellberg right there in the top 4. Now a 4-car battle for the lead. Robertson trying to get away. I'm not sure he'll be able to do that though.
He's pulled a very small gap, but you know, it's not going to be a whole lot when they get down to the run down to Canada corner as they come through the carousel now for what is the 7th time today. But let me tell you something, David, this is absolutely fantastic racing that we're seeing here in this series. Down through the kink now, and they're going to close right on in back to Mark Robinson.
Yeah, indeed. So Robertson trying to get a second clear, but he's not. He's only 8/10 clear, and down the straight, Paul Stump has a bit of a dilemma, trying to follow in the slipstream of Mark Robertson to catch him, trying to look in his mirrors to defend from Jos van der Ven, who is all over the back of him. Leif Hellberg seems a bit more patient on the back of the train here. Robertson will be doing everything he can to break away, everything except pulling out his Ethernet cable, you'd hope. So Stump, Van der Ven, Hellberg in the line here behind Robertson. And then that incident you mentioned for John Morgan has cut up some of the packs that we had behind. Bill Lawrence is in a bit of no man's land, and then Stefan Roestgen and John Unsby continue to battle, riding on board with Van der Ven. You see him roll out of the throttle a little bit before the braking zone, and then try to set up a good exit, get the throttle open early. We're trying to make a move on Stump down into turn 3. No, that's not wise. He'll stay in line for the moment and then try to set up the good exit here, use this momentum to get forward towards Mark Robertson.
And Van der Ven now right alongside with Paul Stump. He's going to have the line as they come down to the turn number 5, down the mooring sweep. Will he be able to complete the move, or will he overdrive it? Stump lets off the gas quite early. Van der Ven going to go through into second place. He's going to try to charge down Mark Robertson now, who's been doing a good job on keeping that gap where it is. Now that Van der Ven has gotten clear of Stump, though, it's who knows what's going to happen at this point.
Obviously, when it comes to one lap pace, Jos van der Ven has plenty of it starting on the front row of this race. He's going to use all of it to catch Mark Robertson. He has a bit of a twitch on the curbing though. We've seen that that can upset these cars. Quite low slung, and putting the power down while you're upset on the curbs can lead to these cars spinning around. Here we go. It'll be pretty much flat out through the kink here. And that means Jos van der Ven can carry all of his momentum in the slipstream behind Mark Robertson, and he follows near perfectly in the wheel tracks as he needs to do to get the most of that slipstream, close up the gap to the lead, and he's definitely dragging Stump and Hellberg along with him. Top 4 cars in underneath a second. They've had a switch for positions behind. Roestgen has gotten in front of Unsby and Bill Lawrence. So in his fight to try and win this race after an early mistake, Stefan Roestgen is giving all of it, but I see a little tweak to his front wing, and he's now 3 seconds down the road of the leading pack. How is he going to be able to make up all of that time? It's definitely not going to be from getting a bump draft in a car like this.
I have some serious concerns if you try to bump draft these cars. Van der Ven, meanwhile, he's up into the lead now, just overtook Mark Robertson down the start-finish straight. So that will put that 167 machine back up into the lead. He started in second place, and he's now up into first place. Will Robertson try to charge him back? He very well might, as they come down off of turn number 3 now, down the mooring sweep. Can Paul Stump make anything up behind them?
Jos van der Ven finds himself in a little bit of a dilemma here, because I don't think he's going to be able to shake these 3 cars behind if Jos van der Ven, if Stefan Roestgen starts catching him. But what he does have is 3 unwitting rear gunners. If that train behind does catch him, he'll have a little bit of insulation between himself and Stefan Roestgen trying to catch him. Or will they just be stepping stones for Stefan Roestgen to get a slipstream to catch Jos van der Ven? Be interesting. We're about to reach the halfway point of this race, and if we have half as much action in the second half as we've had off the front here, I am going to need to catch my breath in this gap between the 2 races.
I think we both will at this point in time. Mark Robertson, though, still in second place. He's going to have a big toe down through the kettle bottoms with Van der Ven, just like Van der Ven pulled with him a little while ago. Paul Stump, he's going to try to defend against Leif Hellberg right behind them. Remember, he's still in this fight as well. He wants to make a move for the lead as well. And of course, Leif, that number 2 machine, he started in 6th place, now up to 4th. Paul Stump, though, he's in 3rd, started 3rd, and you know, all these drivers, they want to stay exactly where they are, except for everybody behind Jos van der Ven. Mark Robertson trying to make something work. Stump as well, with Leif right behind them. All of them are trying to run him down.
We'll see what it is this time, but Jos van der Ven has the fastest lap of the race, the only person to set a lap in the 2-minute ones. It's a 2-minute 1.967, but he is quick on a good day, and he leads 1 more lap.
One more lap for the time being, though Robertson is closed right onto the back of him. He'll definitely be able to make something work coming down off the Moraine sweep, assuming he can get a good drive here off of turn number 3, and it is a fantastic drive, and Life goes right off the track behind them. He overdrove the corner trying to get a good run, and he's going to drop back, lose quite a bit of time. It is a question, though. I don't think he's quite lost the slipstream. If he can work his way up through a couple of corners, he'll be right back in this fight.
Yeah, we have Pro 2 and Pro 4 off-road trucks on the iRacing service now, but these are not those. Leif Hellberg, don't get them confused. These cars are not so good off-road, but a couple of drivers have been pushing the limits to try and gain some positions. Leif Hellberg, not the first and won't be the last. I think he's come away relatively unscathed from that little off-road adventure. He has not lost touch with this top 4 pack. It was Van der Ven and Mark Robertson did get a little close. There was a move potentially happening there. Van der Ven has held onto the lead, and this is where he seems really quick. Coming off the 90-degree left-hander and then down through the carousel, he carries a lot of momentum, but it's into what's functionally the longest straight of the circuit. Robertson, 6/10 behind coming out of the carousel, will probably be right with Van der Ven when they reach the braking, gaining several tenths of a second down this long back straight and into Canada corner. You see Van der Ven pulling off line, trying to break the slipstream, trying to defend into Canada corner, and then 2 tyres on the gravel on the exit, trying to carry all the momentum through. The slipstream is really giving Robertson and the cars behind almost a 1.5 seconds per lap to stick with him.
Now the question is, how will Van der Ven choose to defend on the start-finish straight up through the hill? Once again, Robertson, he's rapidly closing in behind him. Will Van der Ven go to cover that inside line, or will he just give it up and let Robertson take the lead? We'll have to wait and see here. Looks like he's going to keep it in line, and Robertson going to go around on the right side of that car. And Mark Robertson back up into the lead. Van der Ven trying to dive it in, though, to get a good drive off the corner. He had to take evasive action, though, to avoid going right through the back end of Mark Robertson.
So a top 4 pack carry on. Now 3 championship rivals here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Coming into this round, John Morgan had the most points, then Jos Van der Ven, then Paul Stump. So between Van der Ven and Stump in this top 4 pack, they are really battling for the championship in this season finale. I'm sure we'll have time to unpack the point situation a little bit more in the gap between race 1 and 2. But Stump getting a bit twitchy off of turn 3. Leif Hellberg thinks better of trying to throw the move up the hill into that blind corner. Stump definitely struggled to put the power down from the Mazda rotary engine that time. He still remains in touch with Robertson and Van der Ven, though.
And Paul Stump is off the track. Paul Stump losing now to 3rd place. He got loose earlier on, got the car a little unsettled at the exit, overdrove the corner, went off into the gravel and the grass, gave up 3rd place to Leif Hellberg, who goes up into 3rd place and a podium spot, while Jos Van der Ven going to continue to try to run down Mark Robertson, staying with your lead pack here as it comes down to Canada corner, closing in by
Van der Ven
several
up the
tenths
hill.
of a second on just.
So through the final corner, Mark Robertson leads once again. Jos Van der Ven following in his slipstream, in his wheel tracks up the hill. A little bit of traffic in front of them. 7 laps to go, crossing the line this time, and what was 15 car pack for the lead has become a little bit fractured as the race has gone on and incidents have played out. But Robertson remains in the lead. Van der Ven in second. Leif Hellberg is just in touch with them, and Stump and Roestgen are closing in on the lead. Stump has become a little bit of a stepping stone for Stefan Roestgen to pick up a draft and close in towards the lead of the race. His little 4 wheels off track has cost him enough time that it made him the sort of stepping stone between the top pack and behind that Stefan Roestgen needed. Side by side for the lead, Robertson and Van der Ven. Robertson holds on.
Van der Ven going to try to run down Mark Robertson. He's definitely struggling a little bit here. I'm more interested, though, about what Stefan Rosgen can make up here. You said earlier he did have that 4 wheels off and on excursion. That dropped him all the way back to 5th place, and he has crawled his way back up to this lead field. Remember, he started on pole position today, and he really wants to make sure that he finishes in 1st place as well.
And his last lap around was the fastest lap we've seen of the race, 2-minute 01.849. Absolutely blistering pace. He's used the slipstream where it's mattered and been quick through everywhere else. So with 6 laps to go, do not count him out on a recovery drive from as deep in the field as 10th. Van de Ven to the inside of Canada corner. He has to be careful. He has to give Mark Robertson room on the outside. It costs both of them time. They're going to be too wide up through Bill Mitchell Bend here. And Robertson will win out, but it means that it's now 5 cars in the pack for the lead. This has really benefited Stump and Roostjen as Van de Ven becomes our next off-roader. Leif Hellberg seeks to capitalise from that, and they're side-by-side behind him as well. Paul Stump and Stefan Roostjen. Mark Robertson, the only of the top 5 pack, not side-by-side with a competitor. Hellberg not fully in line. Not fully side-by-side with Van de Ven, so Van de Ven sweeps around the outside back into 2nd place, Hellberg into 3rd, and Roostjen was successful in getting past Paul Stump. So that's the state of your top 5. John Unsby just lurking in the background, might not be able to do enough to catch these guys with 6 laps remaining.
Well, 6 laps is a lot of time to make something up, and if these guys keep duking it out the way they are now, he might be able to close on in, which that would probably be a recovery drive if I've ever seen it there. He's in 10th place. Actually, not even a recovery drive, just another improvement for him. He started at 10th place. He's up to 6th place. Hellberg going a little wide off the corner. I think Paul Stump just had another bit of a twitchy moment behind him, or he just cut the line extremely tight. Down through turn number 5, up, down, now through turn 7, down the hurry downs. Jos Van de Ven trying to make a little bit of a look on Mark Robertson as they come down towards turn 8. Nothing quite there yet, but I'm going to tell you right now, he's definitely going to be trying to make something work as they come off the carousel and through the kink. Stefan Rosgen behind them. He also got loose, which let Leif Hellberg continue to close in the gap.
Roostjen grabbed 3rd place down in turn 5, but it was not perfectly clean and executed in the pass. It's cost him a little bit of time, now 1.3 seconds off the lead, and he has to worry more about the cars behind than the slipstream from the cars in front. But the 2 cars in front make it a double slipstream. He can go left or right and still pick it up. Van de Ven grabs Robertson, might have been around the outside towards Canada corner, but that lead has not been safe for anyone. It's switched plenty of times, and that does help Stefan Roostjen catch up just a little bit. Leif Hellberg rides along in 4th. Paul, I think all things considered, doing pretty well to be holding on in 5th then. That'd be a pretty strong result for him, the driver who started 3rd on our grid. Van de Ven from Robertson, from Roostjen, from Hellberg, from Stump. As it goes now, this is exactly the result Jos Van de Ven wants in race 1 to pick up maximum points for his title attempt. He has to defend into turn 1 from Robertson, and that's the kind of thing that defense between 1 and 2 costs them time, really lets the cars behind stay in touch and stay in contention.
It really is, and we've already talked about it quite a few times this race, and we're going to continue to bring it up, but the slipstream is unbelievably powerful with these cars, especially with the high rear wing they have. And like we've been saying, these cars do not have a lot of horsepower in them at all. And that is what's allowing these guys to stay so incredibly close together. Even when they make a bit of a mistake in the back, like Paul Stump, he's made a few mistakes throughout the course of this race, but he has been staying right with this field. He's still in the slipstream when they come down the straight, so he's definitely still able to maybe contend for the win. And as we enter the final laps of the race, Rosgen, he's up into 3rd place, though, looking to get around Mark Robertson. He's not far from the lead, and Van de Ven gets real loose. He's going to lose out to 1st place and 2nd. Van de Ven down into 3rd. From another mistake in one of these 90-degree left-handers.
That one's so tricky because you almost want to hook the inside wheels into the little rut on the inside of the corner. But it works well in some GT cars, it doesn't work so well in open wheelers. And of course there's grass everywhere here at Road America, America's national park for speed. and that will upset your car as well. So Rosjan into the lead, started in the lead, dropped down as far as 10th place, had to fight tooth and nail for every spot. 4 laps to go, he's back in the lead of the race. Mark Robertson in second, Van der Ven holds on to it somehow in 3rd place, as Hellberg and Paul Stump riding along behind. Leading the conga line to the right-hand side of the circuit is Stefan Rosjan, and everyone grabs the hips of the person in front and follows along. They don't want to jump out of line with that slipstream because it is so powerful. So we ride along board. 3rd place, he watches in the perfect position to try and see Mark Robertson go around the outside into turn 1. It doesn't work out. All it does is compromises him and lets our camera car of Jos van der Ven grab another spot from him. Van der Ven, I think, will go up into 2nd.
So Jos van der Ven back into 2nd place. Can he charge down Stefan Rosjan? You know, that 23 car, like you said, dropped back so incredibly far, worked his way back up. He is going to be fighting as hard as he can to keep onto that lead. And there you see it right here. Defends that inside line, then comes back up to cover the racing line into turn number 5, still managed to hang on to the lead. And all of this, keep in mind, he does have the smallest bit of damage to that front wing, so that car is not a clean car, and he is managing to hang on to the lead brilliantly. They are beginning to close in to Kenneth Doomer in that 07 car right ahead of them. That will be lap traffic they are going to catch in this race. Do you think that could play an effect into this fight for the lead?
I'm not expecting anything silly from Kenneth Doomer. He has plenty of race starts in this series, but no doubt we saw earlier that just it can be a distraction for some of the drivers, can make them take a line they weren't necessarily thinking of, and action can happen that way. What it has given is Stefan Rosjan someone in front to steal a slipstream off. Jos van der Ven's not as close as he wants. Look at Stefan Rosjan grabbing the slipstream off the traffic. He gets through. Now the 4 drivers behind will all try and get through Canada Corner before in front of that piece of traffic, in front of Kenneth Doomer, and they get it done. He very, very politely lets the lead pack through. That's exactly what I was hoping we were going to see from him, and I tip my hat to him. Fantastic awareness to know the lead battle was coming up, to get out of the way safely of all of them so that this great battle can continue with 3 laps to go.
Now you saw how he lifted off way before the braking zone to make sure everybody could go by on the racing line and keep the racing line through Canada Corner. That's what allowed this battle to stay close together. And I agree with you. Hats off to Kenneth Doomer for managing to get out of these guys' way so they could keep on fighting. Van der Ven, he's closing right on into Rosjan now. This is about to get antsy.
We've seen 100 position changes, but now, towards the end of the race, it's our 2 drivers who qualified 1st and 2nd on the grid that are back in 1st and 2nd. And this time, unlike the start, Van der Ven is battling just a little bit harder to grab that position away from Stefan Rosjan. Rosjan all the way to the left-hand side of the circuit, going to try and defend the inside down towards turn 5, and crosses back onto the racing line. Van der Ven will maybe get a little bit smoother exit here, but Rosjan and Van der Ven have battled each other many a time before in 60-plus racing adventures. They've battled for the title in the past. Both of them, I believe, have a championship belt in this series. So experienced in this car, experienced at racing against each other, and this is just going to be another classic example of that in race 1 of the final round of this season of 60-plus racing adventures.
It's all going to come to a head here really, really quickly. You saw Van der Ven, he backed off quite a bit from Stefan Rosjan. That allowed Rosjan to get a big gap, but I think what Van der Ven's doing here is actually pretty smart. He's making sure that he can get a massive tow coming off onto the main straightaway, but he's just sacrificed, with him doing this, he's sacrificed himself to Mark Robertson, so he has had to give up an optimal line into Canada Corner to fend off the number 43 car behind him. Now the question is, will Van der Ven be able to focus on overtaking Rosjan as they come onto the main straight? I don't think he will be. I think he's going to have to more focus on Robertson behind him, and he does go 4 wheels off just barely at the exit of turn 14. That will definitely cost him here in this fight for the win.
Yeah, Robertson gets a good tow off Jos van der Ven and then tries to slot into the slipstream of Stefan Rosjan, but Rosjan is a full second up the road. Van der Ven needs Robertson to be able to get that slipstream, otherwise his chance of a race win is done if Stefan Rosjan can skip town and jump ahead in the lead, build up enough of an advantage. I don't think that'll happen. It's 8 tenths coming out of turn 3. That'll just be enough for Robertson, Van de Ven, Hellberg and Stump to stay in touch with Stefan Roosje, but it was touch and go there. Any mistake that is too big from these two drivers might see Roosje with an opportunity to break that toe, get far enough ahead that it'd be impossible for Van de Ven to get back up there and challenge him. They're going to have 1.5 more laps for whatever Robertson, Van de Ven, Hellberg or Stump can do to challenge Stefan Roosje.
This could get tight here. We've seen Robertson, he's been very good at getting to the lead and hanging on to it for some time. He is beginning to slowly reel in that gap to Jos Van de Ven. So the question is, will we see another fight for the lead here? Could Robertson make a move on Stefan Roosje for the lead and keep it there? He certainly doesn't necessarily have the best of exits off of the carousel. He's also defending his line as they come down through the kink in the run down the Kettle Bottoms towards Canada Corner. We're going to have 1 lap to go when they reach the start-finish line this time by. This could get interesting to see how this fight for the lead plays out, but at this rate, I think this one is in the hands of Stefan Roosje.
Definitely at the moment, he's our strongest contender. Paul Stump has dropped out of contention in this one. He's lost about 12 or 13 seconds and a position to John Unsby. So Paul Stump now back in 6th, and there's only 4 cars in contention for the win in this race as we're going to start the final lap. They come up the hill and they can see the starting flag that hangs out over the circuit. And the man there, he's not holding a white flag, but tell me, that's definitely what the drivers will know. That's what they'll see. Robertson right underneath Stefan Roosje. He's on the racing line, so he follows through turn 1 there. And it's Robertson and Van de Ven in line right behind. Don't count out Leif Hellberg. He would get a massive slipstream as the 4th car in the train. Roosje is not as comfortable as he was this time a lap ago, because Robertson right there, and he is towing along Jos Van de Ven. Van de Ven needs to grab as many points as he can out of this race. Paul Stump has dropped down into 6th. If Van de Ven can grab a win here, it would be great for his championship hopes. Roosje quite wide out of 5th, turn 5. And indeed, that costs him a little bit of a run up the hill. Robertson now also doing a little bit of the off-roading and right up underneath him.
Robertson trying to make a look around the outside. He's going to brake hard and check out Jos Van de Ven, and they both go off a little bit. Roosje way off the track. He's going to lose out 2nd and 3rd place. This is now a fight. Oh, never mind. Roosje still side by side with Van de Ven for 2nd place. Mark Robertson, though, up into the lead. He could very well take the win if they come down the Canada straight, but can Van de Ven try to make the charge down towards Canada Corner? They're going to have a huge tow as they come down to turn number 12 for the final time in race number 1.
Van de Ven massively brave on the outside of the carousel, around the outside of the kink. Now, is he going to try and make the move on Mark Robertson? It's as much trying to defend from Roosje as it is trying to grab one over Mark Robertson. It might be a drag race up the hill to the line. They are so close. The run out of the final corner here will be critical. Robertson leading from Van de Ven from Roosje, who puts 2 tyres on the grass on the way in. It's Van de Ven with a great run. The double toe for Roosje up the lead. Up the hill, Robertson pulls out. Here comes Roosje to the line. It's going to be a photo finish, but Robertson grabs it. Van de Ven and Roosje in the end were very close. That was the photo finish. Leif Hellberg is going to grab 4th. Fantastic battle between these guys, and Mark Robertson was in the right place at the right time to grab the win in race 1 here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Van de Ven gets 2nd. That could be absolutely critical, but the battles aren't done. Around goes Roberto De Filippis, and that lets Bob Kern and Richard Coulomb battle up the hill. I think it might be Paulo Bonacera as well in there as well. Another photo finish to the line there, and the tension out the final corner, the pressure a little bit too much for one of our drivers.
And the pressure really gets to you when you're on these final laps. And let me tell you, that was some really exciting race we saw in the final lap. A photo finish for 2nd, a photo finish for, I believe, that ended up being 10th place. That was the photo finish for. And I do believe that it was Bob Kern that won out in that battle for 10th by just 0.02 of a second. So 0.02 separated 10th and 11th place. So extremely close battles all the way across the track for these 18 laps.
So go to the results of the race now and see Mark Robertson gets that win, less than a tenth ahead of Jos van der Ven, and then that margin just 0.035, 300ths of a second that Jos van der Ven gets second place ahead of Stefan Roostjen for some critical points at this phase of the championship. Roostjen in third, Hellberg gets fourth, John Unsby in fifth place, a little bit further down the road, and then Paul Stump, who was part of that leading pack, seventh, Kenneth Baldwin, 8th is Bruce Granheim, 9th France Brink, and 10th place is Bob Kern.
And down in 11th place, we've got Leroy Kopidich to pick up 11th place. 12th right behind them, and their photo finish was Richard Colon in that 68th machine. Paolo Bonacera in 13th place. 14th held Richard Valley. Joel Martin in 15th with PJ Sally in 16th place. John Morgan down at 17th. Roberto De Filippis, after his spin coming out of the final corner of the last lap, he will finish down in 18th place. Graham Healy in 19th place with David Riley in 20th.
Rest of our finishers are going to be up on your screen here from race 1 at Road America. See if there are any drivers who are going to come have a chat with us after this race. Some of them typically do, but it is a little bit of a walk sometimes for our 60 plus drivers from the finishing line up into the commentary box. So, I mean, what a fantastic race, and we're going to do it all again for race 2 in not too long. I think plenty of the drivers will have learned as much as we did watching this, just about how powerful the slipstream is, where you can and can't overtake. In some places, you can get a run at your opponent, and then if you make the move, it ends up just costing both of you time. We've seen some cars fall out of that slipstream, and you can't afford to lose touch with the cars in front. It's a lot like speedway oval racing in that way, Nolan.
Yeah, it really much is, and you know, it was an extremely exciting race, and trust me, we're not done yet. Like you said, we've got race number 2 that we still need to go through yet. If it's anything like this race was, then oh my goodness, it'll really be something else.
So we'll look down, and we have the winner of race 1. We've got Mark Robertson. We'll bring him in, and we'll say, congratulations on a hard-fought race win, Mark Robertson. It was not easy with Jos van der Ven, Stefan Roostjen, and Leif Hellberg behind you. Was it a great pace from you, or do you think you were lucky in the right place at the right time, or a little bit of each?
Well, it was a little bit of each. Those guys are faster than I am on a normal track where we don't have the tremendous draft that this track does have, and the draft allowed me to stay in touch with them, and I tried to just keep the pressure on them until somebody made a mistake, a little ball here and there that I try to capitalize on. Unfortunately, none of the mistakes caused take us both out, so it all worked out great.
Can you talk about the conditions a little bit, because we saw plenty of drivers come into some corners a little bit too hard and end up doing a little bit of off-roading. I think for the most part you managed to avoid doing that. Is the car a little bit twitchy, a little bit understeery, or are there just a couple drivers out there driving a little bit above the grip of the car?
Well, I spent most of my practice time exploring the grip and the exit speeds, and had my share of spins, and that was my goal, just to ratchet it back a notch and make sure I kept all the wheels on the track. The setup that Joel turns out, these setups are just tremendous week in and week out. I can't say enough about that.
Well, you grabbed the win in race 1. You did all the right things, staying with the pack and being in the right place at the right time, and with enough speed to match it. Are you going to be able to go back to back in race 2? What's that going to take?
I don't know if I got that much left in me to do this again. We'll see. It was a lot of fun, no doubt about that. I'm still shaking a little bit from the adrenaline.
Well, congratulations. Anyone you'd like to thank on your way out of the booth?
Just the usual, everybody that puts this league together week in and week out. It's just great racing. The numbers are coming up every week. We've got plus 30 plus fields every week, seems like, and to have that this late in the season with the last race, it's just hoping for better things to come.
There we go, our race 1 winner, Mark Robertson. And now I'll move on to our second place finisher, Jos van der Ven. And wow, it's always an interesting championship battle in this series. And I think race 1 here tonight has kept it a little bit interesting. Is that your understanding of the numbers as well?
I think so.
I think you had a little bit of points advantage over Paul Stump, but were a little bit behind John Morgan. And the order that you've all finished, I think this championship will still come down to race 2, will it not?
Well, I had calculated that the second place was good enough because John Morgan has to drop another race, and his lowest race was 14 points, so he can gain 21 points, and the difference was 9 points. So with second place, 30 points, I should be the winner of the championship. That's what I calculate, but I can be wrong.
And I'm sure in the little gap between race 1 and 2, on our side here at RaceSpotTV, we're going to calculate some of the numbers as well. But certainly just looking at this race under a microscope all by itself was probably very exciting for you. Drag race to the line, and did you just not go the right way to be able to grab the win in the drag race up the hill?
No. I was pushing very hard. It's difficult to escape from these guys, but on the other hand, they can't escape from me too. And I make a few mistakes where I lost some positions, but I could make that up. But as I calculated it, the second place was enough, and I didn't want to take too much risk.
Yeah, in the end, I think you had maybe a little bit more to lose than some of the drivers around you. You were fighting, did really well, and for a second there, you were holding on to the fastest lap of the race. I think a lot of that comes down to the slipstream. How do you feel about these cars at Road America? Because we see there's about 3 straights around the circuit where if you're within a second of the car in front, you're really going to close up a lot.
Yeah, it's nice to battle for every lap for the position, but you know it comes down to the position in the last 2 laps or so, and then you must take all the risk and do what you can to win or to be on the podium.
Well, congratulations on second place in race 1. Hopefully we'll see you again in race 2, and we'll crunch the numbers and see if we've got some slightly bigger congratulations to deliver to you after that one. But just from your result here in race 1, any shout outs you'd like to give while you're here on RaceSpotTV?
First of all, a shout out to myself, and then to my family at home, and to all the racers in this league, because they drive very straightforward and honest, and don't try to push you off the track. So to them, and well, of course to you too.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jos, and we'll see you again after race 2, I really hope. And our third place finisher in race 1 was Stefan Rostjen, and Nolan Rempel, I'll let you talk to him about his recovery drive.
Thank you, David. Now, Stefan Rosden, you did start on pole position, encountered a little bit of troubles earlier on when you went off track, dropped back, I believe it was as far down as 10th place, still though managed to recover beautifully and ended up finishing in 3rd place.
Yeah, that was an interesting race. I made a bad mistake at the beginning, last corner, and well, I had luck that I didn't drive into the wall, And and I could try start the recovery, and it was a little bit tricky to get past John Unsby. He was defending very strongly. But after I've got that, I could drive to the lead again, and then I made again mistakes.
Well, all things still considered, despite the challenge of Road America, you still did manage to come away with the podium place. You were actually drag racing with Jos Vandeven for second place as you came up the hill on the start-finish straight on the last lap of the race. Do you think, given one more lap, you could have potentially gone and picked up the win?
One more lap, everything can happen here. You have such a big draft here. I think it's just a draft on the lap, and so everything can happen, and a little bit of luck. Yes.
And it was honestly probably one of the biggest recovery drives that I have seen in a very long time. So congratulations to you for managing to both recover the car without any damage on it and come away with the podium spot, just over a tenth apart from Mark Robertson, our race winner today. And we do still have one more race to go yet today. We do have our second race that's coming up shortly. Do you think that we can expect to see a much stronger performance from you? And maybe we'll get to see you up here again at the end of that one.
I will try to avoid some mistakes, and then I should be fine, but everything can happen here.
And before we let you go to that second race, do you have anybody that you would like to shout out today on RaceSpotTV?
Big thank you to the admins for their commitment. Thank you to RaceSpot for the great shows, and thank you to all drivers who participate. Very fair driving. I love that.
Thank you, Mr. Stefan Rosgen, and we look forward to seeing you in race number 2, and we hope to be speaking to you up here again very soon.
Thank you.
Well, Nolan, thanks for doing that, and we're going to have to take a bit of a break here on RaceSpotTV, but don't go too far because we are going to come back with Race 2, 60 Plus Racing Adventures. We're going to do it all again from Road America, and everything that we've seen in Race 1, all the action, all the overtakes, hopefully we're going to see one better, one cleaner, and it will be fantastic to watch. And at the end, we'll crown our champion of this season in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Do stick around for that.
voice of the Lucas Oil Off-Road Racing Series. Introducing Pro 2 and Pro 4 trucks on iRacing. Game on!
Growing up as a kid in Oklahoma, where I'm from, the Chili Bowl is the biggest race that we have. The Chili Bowl has kind of been my favorite race of the year. Growing up a dirt racer in Oklahoma, that's kind of the holy grail.
Welcome back, one and all, here on RaceSpotTV, because we are gearing up for race 2 of this round of 60 plus racing adventures, the season finale, and a champion will be crowned at the end of this race. It's qualifying underway right now before we jump into another 18 lap race here at fantastic Road America. Race 1 was a delight. Race 2 promises all the same: slipstream action, pack racing, light open wheeler cars, and some of the most seasoned and experienced sim racers there are around in the 60 plus racing adventures. I'm David Haynes, Nolan Rempel alongside me, and we've got the one, the only Randy Cheneth in production. Thank both of those guys for joining me. And Nolan, do you think we'll see much different in race 2?
I'm not thinking we will, honestly. You know, a lot of these guys, they were racing completely all out in the final laps of the race, and I would not expect them to be doing anything less as we enter the final round of the season here in the 60 plus racing adventures.
Well, we've got qualifying going on, and a lot of the drivers are about halfway through the first of their flying laps. Bill Lawrence is out there, Leif Hellberg is out there, John Unsby out there on a lap as well, and of course, actually I don't see Stefan Rostron on his lap yet. He's got plenty of time though. They get 2 flying laps in this 10-minute session, and we've seen that a quick lap is just over 2 minutes, so you could leave the pit lane about now and still get both of your laps in. You could leave the pit lane in 2 minutes and still have enough time to get 1 flying lap in. So we're looking at Paul Stump who was racing pretty well in the top 4. Unfortunately lost touch with the leaders at the end, ended up finishing 6th in race 1, but had that race leading pace, so we'll probably be looking to improve in this one. Gonna see if this is a time when he crosses the line through the final corner. It's gonna go up the hill, and sooner or later the timing and scoring will let us know how he's faring, and quite a few times are going to come in on the left hand side of your screen shortly.
John Morgan, top of the charts so far to start us off today with the 2-minute 3-second time. Already 7 times in behind him. Paul Stump, you were just talking about him. He's up into 2nd place, and he is less than a 10th behind John Morgan. So an extremely tight qualifying field, as can be expected with these low horsepower cars. Only 240 horsepower with these cars. So we were talking about how there really isn't a lot. We were not kidding. These cars are not powerful at all, so that's what it's allowing these times to be pretty darn close to each other in the top portions of your field.
And after race 1, some of our interviewees mentioned it. It's fixed setup here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, because all of our competitors are pretty level field, and of course that's one of the things that contributes to how close the racing is. Everyone's out there qualifying on the same fuel load, on the same setup, in the same conditions, and it's John Morgan at the peak of the field right now. Paul Stump in 2nd, Leif Hellberg has 3rd. That's with 1 lap counted. All those guys are on their 2nd flying lap now. If they got a good banker in the bag after their 1st lap, then this you can.
Absolutely, and just like in the first race, Stefan Rosgen, he's up to the top of the timing charts with a 2:03.193. That is about 2/10 up from John Morgan's time, so he is currently your fastest qualifier, just like he was in that first race. And I was talking to him just before we came to the 2nd race, and we were hoping to see him back up here very soon so we could talk to him more. And currently, he's on a good track to set that, but the times are beginning to drop as Paul Stump and Jos van de Ven go top of the charts with a 2:02.630. So nearly a second up on Bill Lawrence's time, who's down at 6th.
There's no tyre warmers for these cars as well, so maybe some of the drivers have used their outlap and their 1st lap to just get the tyres warmed up, get confidence in the car, and plenty of drivers going quicker on their 2nd lap. You mentioned Jos van de Ven, who's at the top of the times right now. Paul Stump in 2nd, but some other drivers like Bill Lawrence and L. Leroy Coppage have just improved. Kenneth Baldwin improves into 6th place, so lots of times coming in now. There's a couple like Stefan Rostgen and David Riley who've saved their runs till a bit deeper in the session. Got a couple of drivers out there still on track, still looking to set some times, and Stefan Rostgen is getting towards the end of his 2nd flying lap. 4th place start wouldn't be any problems for him, but he'd love to grab pole position, lock it out in both races 1 and 2.
And we'll have to see as he begins to approach the start-finish line, where will he finish up in this session? He is not going to improve. It will remain 4th place for Stefan Rosgen with a 2-minute 3-second.246 for his time.
Mr. Consistency, both of his laps within a 1/10 of a second of each other. Unfortunately, as you mentioned, the 2nd one not able to be an improvement. So a lot of our drivers that we expect to be up the top have now completed their laps. There's a couple still out there with time left in the session. 2 minutes left, so everyone who's on a flying lap now, a good chance of being able to finish it. One of those people we're looking at is Bob Kern. David Riley's just jumped across the line and improved his time into 11th place. But, we got Fred McIntosh out there, PJ Selly out there, and of course Bob Kern, no time on the board yet. This might be his first and potentially only flying lap. We'll see. He comes towards the line up the hill, and boy is it a run out of that final corner to the start-finish line. It doesn't come up so quickly, and I don't see time coming on there for Bob Kern. That might have been his outlap. We'll see if he gets time at the end of this session to complete that one. At the very least, he gets just a little bit more practice time under his belt to practice how much speed he can throw into some of these corners and keep it on the pavement.
That's something that we saw going on quite a bit in race number 1. You know, we saw these drivers, a lot of them were struggling. We saw quite a few drivers taking 4 wheels off excursions into the grass and or gravel on this track throughout some of the tighter corners, especially off of that last corner. It seemed was especially popular with that sort of driving. So I'm pretty sure that, you know, Bob Kern, even if he doesn't get a lap in, he will appreciate getting that extra bit of practice time.
There's another driver taking a little bit of that extra practice. It's David Riley in the number 14 car, who's completed 2 flying laps but hasn't immediately parked the car and had it taken back to the garage. He's still out there using this remaining time as practice, and that's not a bad strategy. Stay pretty warmed up while everyone else is parking their cars and looking forward towards the race. The standard timer of the session elapses, and that's qualifying done, so Bob Kern did not get to complete a flying lap, unfortunately. He's in the company of quite a few drivers that didn't get a lap in the bank. We'll have a second to look at that qualifying order momentarily. A lot of the names we saw up the front in race 1 did get a qualifying time in, but there's a couple that I see about almost 10 drivers who did not get a qualifying lap in for race 2. All the cars now lining up on the grid. We'll take a look at that starting order. So on pole, Jos van der Ven, looking to improve on a second place in race 1, go one better in race 2. He'll start alongside Paul Stump. Then it'll be Leif Hellberg and Stefan Rostjen on the second row. The third row will be Bill Lawrence and Kenneth Baldwin. Behind them is going to be John Morgan and L. Leroy Coppage. 9th place, John Unsby. Rounding out the top 10, Bruce Granheim. 11th place goes to David Riley. 12th is Richard Coulomb. Nolan.
Kenneth Dumer in 13th place with Louis Cannell down in 14th. Jack Turner in 15th with Joel Martin in 16th place. Roberto De Filippis in 17th place with Gerard Florissen in 18th. Fred McIntosh in 19th with Gianni Raspaldo in 20th place. And PJ Sally in 21st with Wally Malsby in 22nd. Ralph Kimura in 23rd place with Bob Kern down in 24th.
Now into the drivers with no time set. All of these drivers able to take the start of the race. But I think I saw Mark Robertson having some technical dramas, will not take the start of this race, unfortunately, because he raced really well in race 1. Franz Brink, Richard Varley, Bill McCaw also in session. Might take the start of the race from towards the back of the grid. Graham Healy, Carl Bogle, John Fletcher, Larry Thomas also kicking around. We'll see how many drivers do form up on the grid, but we had a little shot of it earlier and there's plenty of them there. We're going to have another cracking race in 60 plus racing adventures in just 1 second when that safety car leads the pack away. And a beautiful Porsche GT3 it is. It's got a full lap ahead of it of leading this field of Pro Mazdas to the start. Let's take a look at some of the track information here. Road America, located in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, in the United States of America. 6.4 kilometers, quite the lap. And here's a fact for you that I think I calculated a while back. 93% the length of Circuit Spa-Francorchamps, so long lap around here. And the drivers are going to get a good sighting of it behind the safety car. 20 degrees Celsius in the air, that's 68 Fahrenheit, but 37 on track. Critically, that's a couple degrees warmer than race 1, so conditions will be a little bit slipperier than what the drivers expected out of race 1, but I think with the warm-up and the qualifying session, a lot of them will have adapted to it.
That's certainly something they would need to do, but with the track being slipperier, we could see a few more of those off-track excursions that we saw down in race number 1, and it could make for a very interesting jump off of the start for us today. Now, Jos van der Ven, he did come away with second place in that first race. He's starting up on pole position today with Stefan Rosgen down in 4th. How do you think that could play in? Because remember, Rosgen, he is extremely fast around here. You know, he worked his way up. He started on pole position, fell back down to 10th, then worked his way back up to 3rd, and given the lap, he quite possibly could have taken a win even.
Yeah, exactly. Just based on that form alone, you think that it doesn't matter so much where you start, so long as you're in the top 10, so long as you can stay in touch with the lead pack that will inevitably form. I think if you were someone even like David Riley or Richard Coulomb starting on the 6th row of the grid, so long as you don't make any huge mistakes, so long as you don't have to dodge a giant wreck in front of you, there's plenty of time in those 18 laps to work your way up to the pointy end of the field. I mean, if Rostion can recover from 10th after a couple laps, then anyone starting in 10th, definitely a chance of a good result. I think the names we saw running up the front in race 1 are all up the front here again in race 2. I mean, Van der Ven, Stump, Hellberg and Rostion are the top 4 on the grid, and they were our top 4, not necessarily in that order at the end of race 1. So, I mean, it's going to be action-packed, I think, from the start of this race. And then John Morgan, out of 7th place, has had plenty of good results this season. That's why he's in the top 3 in the points coming into this round. So I don't think we could count him out of potentially standing on the podium either, especially if some of these guys in front race each other just a little bit too hard early in the race.
That's what some of those drivers down further in the back are counting on, is maybe these drivers up front get a little too antsy off the start. Though the last start to the race 1 was very, very polite. Everybody gave each other the proper amount of room. It really took to lap 4 before things got really interesting. So we'll see if they are just as polite at the start of race number 2.
Now, the current generation of Porsche 911 is not the world's biggest car. It's a sports car, but it looks massive compared to these little single-seater Pro Mazdas, all of which are gearing up to get racing. Got 18 laps in front of us. That safety car dives into the pit lane. Jos van der Ven controls the field, and he is a wily competitor. We'll see when he decides to get this race underway. Green flag waves. We are racing. And the flagman beats the life out of that green flag, but Van der Ven with a great jump, Paul Stump too, and Rostion very, very reactive off the start. He's going to grab a spot potentially off Leif Hellberg. Bill Lawrence through as well, so not the start Leif Hellberg would have wanted. He's lost 2 through turn 1, almost everyone clean, and that's what we like to see for a race like this. Clean start from everyone. Number 7 car doing a little bit of lawn mowing, but I think Jared Florison will just be able to pick that up, lose some spots, but keep it out of the wall.
And that start was almost not as clean as it could have been. There was one driver, I believe it was Leroy Kupadish, that cut across and nearly wiped out John Morgan before they even got down to turn number 1. And he proceeded to make an edge jump. We got a spin around in the back, though, and that is John Unsby. He had a few incidents in the last race. We have another car that's off into the grass going into turn number 5. He went into the wall as well. And so, incidents right out of the gate.
Looking at a replay here, and this is John Unsby in the yellow and black car. Very fitting, and always helps me pick him out of the crowd. What happened for him? Did he get help? Was it by himself? On the brakes down into turn 5. Little bit of understeer potentially from that car behind. And might have helped John Unsby around. Doesn't look like any damage to either competitor, but he's facing the wrong way on the first lap, and that's dropped him all the way to the tail of the field. Up the front though, Van der Ven has tried to break away. It's not really going to work. Paul Stump holds on to 2nd. Stefan Rostion moved himself up into 3rd place. Bill Lawrence followed through. Kenneth Bolden followed through. And Leif Hellberg has lost 3 spots from 3rd on the grid. He's back down into 6th. The cars behind all coming through. But he's still part of the lead pack. It is not race over at all for Leif Hellberg. And look, Jos van der Ven darts to the right-hand side trying to break the slipstream. Might all be in vain. Battle on for 2nd place though, Nolan.
It certainly is. Paul Stump trying to fend off Stefan Rosgen. Not going to be able to make that work. They are going to be side by side into the braking zone of turn number 1. Stump is going to yield though. Rosgen goes around the outside of turn 1 to pick up 2nd place. This is already picking up right here on lap number 2 of racing action here in the 2nd race of the 60 Plus Racing Adventure season finale. Stump runs really wide though, goes off 2 tires up into the grass. He's going to lose massively out on spots here as cars going to go by him in a train around the right side.
Yeah, Bill Lawrence through, Kenneth Baldwin through, and it really checks up the pack here. They're going to be too wide in the braking zone coming down into turn 5. Hopefully we don't see contact like a repeat of lap 1 that we saw deeper in the field. These guys will give each other plenty of room and they will carry on, but meanwhile Van der Ven and Roostjen are trying to break away. Bill Lawrence is leading this train from 3rd position on down, and if there's any 2 drivers that could break away in the lead of this race, you would think it could be Van der Ven and Roostjen. Nolan, a little bit of drama deeper in the field though.
It was Fred McIntosh driving in 16th place who just plowed through the back end of Louis Cannell down to the turn number 5, misjudged the braking point massively. Both cars went off facing the wrong way. Replay now up on your screens, and that right there tells you about all you need to know. Fred McIntosh really misjudging the braking point for turn number 5.
Nasty little incident for both drivers, damage on both cars, and we'll get a look at how that happened. I think what we've seen is the driver has gone a little bit wide through turn 3, and that's put them on the back foot. And this braking zone down into turn 5, it's pretty difficult because the moment you start getting on the brakes, the track drops away downhill. But I think that's just a case of becoming unsighted and losing track of where your braking marker is. It's just unfortunate that early in the race that's cost 2 drivers quite dearly.
It certainly has. So the first opening laps of the season finale, definitely not as clean as the first few rounds were. It took about lap 4 before things really started to heat up. In race number 1, it took all of 2 laps to heat it up in race number 2. Jos Van der Ven still controlling the field from out front, but like we've seen so many times in race number 1, if a driver tends to pull a gap up front in the lead of the field, they really don't hang on to it for very long. So I feel it'll only be a matter of time before Stefan Rosgen manages to find a way through.
Yeah, Van der Ven's been trying to break the draft, and that's just meant that Lawrence and Baldwin behind have caught up a little bit. For a second there, it did look like these top 2 might be able to break away, but now Bill Lawrence is right there. He's pulling everyone along with him. 8 cars in a train for the lead of this race. I think it's only a couple of incidents behind that have separated them from 9th and 10th of Bruce Granheim and David Riley. So down the hill and then towards the carousel, clean for everyone, but Van der Ven leading, but he's got no margin for error and no safety cushion.
Absolutely not, and Stefan Rosgen right behind him, he's going to be looking for the smallest of slip-ups so he can find a way through back in the lead of this race. Look at as he comes through the kink, get a huge run down the corner, ducks out of the slipstream a little bit, and then comes back across Bill Lawrence. He's going to be right on the back end of him. Will he make the look coming into Canada corner? Not quite. Stays in line. He'll definitely be trying to look for something going into turn number 1.
Roostjen pulling to the inside there was almost more to defend Bill Lawrence than it was to try and overtake Jos Van der Ven, which was interesting to see now through the final corner, which has been tricky for a few. I think Kenneth Baldwin there runs a little bit wide. Leif Hellberg and Paul Stump both in the grass in the background there. Both of them going almost full rally cross spec through the final corner. That was interesting. I wonder if they got together and that sent them out there, or both of them just overcommitted to the corner. I see a tiny bit of damage potentially on the car of Leif Hellberg there, so interesting for those 2 drivers, and it might let the top 4 break away a little bit. Roostjen, Van der Ven, Bill Lawrence and Kenneth Baldwin trying to build a little bit of a gap out.
They're certainly trying to, but I don't think it's going to work out for very long because we do have Bill Lawrence and Kenneth Baldwin right behind them trying to close in that gap as well. And now Van der Ven trying to go back for the lead on Stefan Rosgen, looking not close enough to make the move, going to get back in line. And so 4-car train, and you saw Lawrence trying to go for a lunge, but he overdrove the corner just a little bit, sacrificed the exit. Baldwin not taking advantage of that just yet. So close as they come out through turn number 6.
Coppedge, Morgan and Leif Hellberg have all managed to join back up, so Paul Stump, the I guess biggest loser of that off-track adventure in the final corner, finds himself a little bit further back down the road, battling in a different pack. So now it's 7 cars that are most likely for the lead of the race. Make that 6 as I see Leif Hellberg potentially dropping down my timing screen. Not sure what's going on for him, but right up front, Roostjen moving around, trying to break that slipstream, and Hellberg is in the pits. I don't know if this is a technical drama for him or if he made a mistake and ended up in a barrier. Replay will tell us the answer we need to know. There's a little bit of damage on his front wing, and then the thing is spun around. They put those tyre barriers there for a reason, because that's a common error, but I think he's ended up embedded in the tyre barriers. That's unfortunate for Leif Hellberg early in this race. His race over because he has been stuck into the apparently magnetic tyres that they're installing around the circuit here at Road America.
Well, if there's one good thing about having magnetic tire barriers, it's that it'll keep cars off of the racing surface. So that is rather interesting to say the very least. I haven't seen that one in quite a while, but Leif Hellberg, very unfortunate start to his day. He is going to be off early. Van de Ven, though, in this top 4 battle is still incredibly close. Stefan Roskin really trying to defend as hard as he can, getting a great drive, really, off of turn number 5. The question is, will he be able to hang on to first place as Van de Ven looks to close in that gap?
You can just tell riding on board here that Van de Ven rolls out of the throttle and just stays behind Stefan Rostron. And what that does, though, is it allows the guys behind to benefit off the slipstream, like Bill Lawrence and Kenneth Baldwin. This is our top 4 cars coming up the hill. Baldwin taking a bit of a look at Lawrence. Not a normal overtaking spot up the top of the hill there, but he was right up close. Clearly got a good run up the hill. 2 cars behind is Coppage and John Morgan, because Paul Stump has had another scruffy little lap in his mint-looking car. And I mean that the colour, not the quality or cleanliness of the vehicle. So Rostron trying to break the slipstream to Van de Ven, I think somewhat in vain. What we do have is a couple of other great packs battling deeper down in the field. I feel like we should probably take a look at. David Riley leads a train in 8th, which includes Bruce Grantham, Kenneth Boomer and Richard Coulomb. They battle here towards Canada corner, side by side. Bruce Granheim puts his nose in front, if only for a minute, in the number 71 car. And leading the tail here, looking Kenneth Duma and Richard Coulomb in this as well. They're side by side. Bruce Granheim leads David Riley, leads Kenneth Duma from Richard Coulomb there. And another 4-car battle is what's behind them with Roberto De Filipis. Bob Kern, we saw, didn't manage to set a qualifying time. He's got Joel Martin and Jack Turner for company, and they're coming out the final corner as well, going to lead up the hill. And Bob Kern, from having no qualifying time, starting 25th on the grid, has gained 11 spots, making that 12. He's going to try and outbrake around the outside on Roberto De Filipis, who's clearly a proud Italian because the colours of the flag feature on his Pro Mazda, but he's also proud to break down the inside a little bit deeper than Bob Kern can. He'll hold on to 12th place. Something for everyone in 60-plus racing adventures. Battles all through the field, Nolan.
And you know, battles all throughout the field is exactly what we like to see. It creates some really exciting action for us to cover. It makes it extremely exciting to watch. It's honestly some of the better races that I've seen in a very, very long time. As Richard Coulomb up front, he managed.
So continue to watch here. Filipis, Joel Martin got past Bob Kern, so from trying to grab 12th place, Bob Kern's now back into 14th. But that's the way it goes with the slipstream here around Road America. It really does come and go like that. And they've had France Brink join up onto the back of their train as well. So as they battle, France Brink in the number 53 car joins. And here goes Joel Martin and Bob Kern nearly side by side through the carousel. There's plenty of cars where you wouldn't be able to do that. These things have got plenty of grip, plenty of downforce, so they can almost afford to go side by side through the carousel or through the kink here. But Bob Kern stays in the draft. De Filipis builds out a little bit more of a lead over these two. Bob Kern try and outbreak into Canada corner. He won't. He'll stay in line this time. So 60-plus racing adventures, very popular league for people who want to race with some like-minded gentlemen. Dramas up front though, Nolan.
Kenneth Baldwin, he's off and into the tire barriers at turn number 14. It's a mistake that we saw quite a few times in race number 1 and more in this one, and this time it has just cost Kenneth Baldwin his race. Overdrove it, lost the back end, came around, went nose first into the tire barriers, and that has just cost Kenneth Baldwin, who's running in 3rd place, his race. That is going to be an absolute heartbreak.
Here's the replay of that. You see the broken Old Spice car in the pit lane, and now we get the replay of what happened here through the final corner. Seen plenty go a little bit too wide out there, and he's ridden across the bumps out there, tried to keep the throttle in, but it is just a little bit too uneven. Pitched the car around into the inside wall, nose first. Big damage for Kenneth Baldwin, unfortunately. Back on the live pictures though, still 5 cars for the lead of the race. Stefan Roestjen leads. Bill Lawrence has gotten around Jos van der Ven, and then L. Leroy Coppage in 4th. John Morgan in 5th. John Morgan will be looking for a good result, but our understanding of the points would suggest that Jos van der Ven may have done enough to grab another championship in 60 plus racing adventures. Not 100% sure of that, and we will seek some official confirmation, but definitely your 2 strongest championship contenders are going to be battling each other in this top 5 pack. Stefan Roestjen continues to lead. Van der Ven riding along in 3rd. John Morgan in 5th at the tail of this little battle. And you can see all of them driving so hard through Canada Corner, pushing out onto that curbing, putting a little bit of wheels on the gravel. If Van der Ven was any closer to Bill Lawrence, the 2 cars would be welded together. Tries to set a good exit out of the corner, but Lawrence has the advantage of having the slipstream from Roestjen in front to help him defend. For all the slipstream that Van der Ven gets in 3rd, Lawrence also gets some off the leader. We'll see what happens into turn 1 though.
Well, Van der Ven really closing in, but not nearly close enough to make a move. And let me tell you something, Jos van der Ven, he is being extremely patient in this race, and that is exactly what you want to see. You need to sometimes be a little more patient. You can't just go for a gap if there is one, because sometimes it looks like there's a gap, but there really isn't. And Van der Ven has been doing a fantastic job of judging where the gaps are, where there isn't. Though he might have just cost us a little bit. You saw Leroy Coppage tried to make a look on his left side as they came down towards turn 5, though that didn't quite go anywhere for him. Van der Ven on the brakes now, and Coppage tried to go around the outside of Van der Ven into turn number 5. That didn't work out for him, and he almost lost out to John Morgan.
Yeah, John Morgan tried to seize the opportunity, didn't quite work for him. So the battle continues raging on at the front, and John Morgan was actually the fastest of these top 5 pack. He had the fastest lap last time around of all of our drivers. He was the fastest car out there, only by the slimmest of margins though, because the pack remains. They're going to catch a little bit of traffic, I would think. And that definitely happens with as many cars as we've seen take these race starts. Good grid in 60 plus racing adventures. I've seen some races that were around 20 cars, so to have 35 in race 1 and 30 in race 2 says great things about 60 plus racing adventures. Plenty of names that have stuck around for plenty of seasons in this championship as well. And the great thing is every year more drivers become eligible.
Stefan Roestjen still trying to make a look, and he's going to go around Gerard Florissen in that 28th place, and that 7 car going to drop back a bit here and let the lap traffic through. Roestjen still has one more lap car on his way, though. It's Louis Canal. He's going to have to try to find a way through next, but so far, all of these lead lap cars have been getting around Gerard Florissen all right.
Yeah, a lot of respect between the drivers in this series, which is great to see, and it also means that some of them don't have the race they're hoping for and they end up going a lap down. They try and stay out of the way of the drivers who are having a battle. What the number 7 car is doing is forming a little bit of a bridge between the 3rd and 4th place runners. So Coppage and Morgan aren't going to lose out on a slipstream because they're picking it up off that car of Rispaldo, and another car jumps out of the way of our leaders as well. So the top 5 battle continues. Roestjen with a lead, a little bit untroubled, but Lawrence and Van der Ven battling over 2nd and 3rd. Coppage and Morgan are still going to just stay in touch here as well. Careful pushing too wide out of that corner and getting on the dirt. That's ended in catastrophe for a couple of drivers. And these cars definitely don't react well to a bit of off-roading. And maybe you can get away with it in a GT car, maybe you can get away with it in an Australian touring car, but in a car like this, very sensitive to going onto the grass, a little bit twitchier than some of the other cars that you might see racing on RaceSpotTV.
So a little bit of a gap pulled between your top 5 drivers, but with time, that gap will slowly begin to close on in. Jos van der Ven already getting the pole from Bill Lawrence, who's getting the pole from Stefan Rosgen as they come down through the corner, coming up to the halfway point now in round number 2. Behind them, John Morgan and Leroy Coppage trying to work their way back up. The question is, do you think they'll be able to do it? They do still have the slipstream. If these guys are going to start battling again like they were earlier, they'll most certainly be able to get back into this fight.
Yeah, no doubt, especially as you see the run Jos van der Ven has at Bill Lawrence and just stays put, stays in line. That's interesting to see. Lawrence definitely closing up big time on Rosgen. Your top 3 cars covered by about 0.2 of a second. They nearly went side by side into turn 1, but Rosgen had it covered. So Coppage stays in touch, but John Morgan, I think, had a poor run or didn't pick up the slipstream down the main straight. I'm seeing 4 cars in the red box for the lead pack. Helicopter shot here shows just how close Lawrence and van der Ven are. Van der Ven riding right underneath the rear wing, a great view of the rain light and rear crash structure until he pulls out to the inside. Steals the draft off Rosgen. Is it going to be 2 for 1? Not quite, but he does grab the spot from Bill Lawrence, it looks like, as Rosgen runs a bit wide. So now Rosgen will just hold on to the lead, but van der Ven in front of Lawrence ahead of Coppage.
And Bruce Granholm has gone for a spin in turn number 1, and this time he did get help from none other than Joel Martin. This was in another fierce battle for some spots for the back of the top 10. He got helped around going into the corner, tried to recover, didn't quite manage to get it. And Franz Brink as well, who was running in 13th place, he just overdrove the corner on his own, coming into the same area. So the replay now up on your screen, and there you see both cars going around. Misfortune continues to fall onto several other drivers in this field.
Up the front, Rosgen, van der Ven, side by side, get pretty close. This is heading down towards Canada corner. Van der Ven with a fantastic run, goes around the outside, grabs the lead of the race from Rosgen. Lawrence stays in touch, and all this battling has allowed John Morgan to catch up as well. So 5 cars for the lead of the race once again. Bill Lawrence in the fray, Coppage in the fray as well. Van der Ven going to lead lap 10, it looks like. We're going to have 8 laps to go past the halfway point of race 2 in this round of 60 plus racing adventures. Van der Ven, as he heads across the start finish line, moves to the right to try and break the draft, try and defend into turn 1. The 2 are side by side. Who's going to be the winner through turn 1? Anyone who survives is surely a winner. Van der Ven keeps his nose just in front, but as they battle side by side, it costs each other time, and everyone who's behind can pick and choose which draft they want to pick up. How close was Bill Lawrence to understeering into Stefan Rosgen? Side by side, Coppage grabs a position, but that was so close, inches from catastrophe.
And riding on board now with a replay, I think this is on board Leroy Coppage or Bill Lawrence, came through turn number 2, and Lawrence went way out of line, and Coppage actually had to go off track to get around Lawrence as he came back onto the track. That nearly ended in disaster. They're still side by side though, and Lawrence just about chops off the back wheel of Stefan Rosgen as he came through turn number 6. There you're, bit of a gap now for me now, but that got really close, but somehow everybody managed to keep their cars pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, respectful, close, heart-in-mouth racing up the front here. Van der Ven and Coppage now in the top 2 spots, and pretty close with a little bit of gap to Stefan Rosgen and a couple car lengths to Bill Lawrence and John Morgan. It'll all close up once again. We've seen that in race 1, we've seen that in the first half of this race as well. It's not over until that final lap. 5th place can definitely make a run for the lead of this race later on. So Van der Ven is going to potentially lead another lap. The guys behind have got to be careful. Definitely the pressure is ramping up, and they're putting a little bit more on the line, taking a little bit more risk, but hopefully not too much, because we want to see all 5 of these cars get to the finish. Van der Ven once again darting towards the inside wall and leads the conga line over that way.
And the conga line once more will go for the inside wall, up to the left side of the racetrack, down, clipping the apex of turn number 1. Van der Ven leads them out off of turn number 1, down towards turn 3. Oh my goodness, this is getting so close. John Morgan has dropped back a little bit from this field. He might be wanting to back off a little bit. I think that's what he's been trying to do here. You know, ease off a little bit more after the absolute chaos that just about unfolded right ahead of him. And Kopitisch did have a big run on Jos Van der Ven, backed out, and then nearly gets wiped out by Stefan Rosgen that lunges into turn number 5, nearly clipping him off the track and nearly taking out Jos Van der Ven as well.
Bold move, somehow he made it work and did pull it up in time to not collect Jos Van der Ven. You're very right, John Morgan would have had a fantastic view of how close Rosgen and Lawrence got a couple of times, riding along right behind them, and wouldn't want to get tangled up in any of that. But once again, it's Van der Ven and Rosgen. Line astern at the front of the race are 2 drivers who started first and second on the grid in race 1. Van der Ven, who started on the pole in this race. Rosgen started in 4th. We said that's not going to be any troubles for him, and he's led some laps in this race. Gets a fantastic run through the kink. Has to pick which way he's going to go to try and get around Jos Van der Ven. And a phenomenal run, and we know he can be strong on the brakes, so I think that is the lead for Stefan Rosgen. And he chops across Jos Van der Ven, who now gets a good run out of Canada corner. This will be anyone's race in 6 laps time, and they're fighting now like it's only 2 laps to go. They've still got 15 miles or so yet to still race.
They're fighting like it's the last lap because they're being so aggressive here. And you know, you saw Bill Lawrence in the background as well. He picked up a spot. Olivier Kopitisch. My question is, will Jos Van der Ven be as patient to get around Stefan Rosgen this time? The answer is absolutely not. Makes the move as soon as possible. Will he be able to make that move around the outside? He will. Clears Rosgen going into turn 1, runs it a little bit wide. Rosgen stepping out the back end big time. Still though, managed to get a big drive down into turn 2. Still side by side through turn number 3. Rosgen retakes the lead. Van der Ven, a bit of an impatient move down the front straightaway, and that might have cost him here. Bill Lawrence trying to get around him for second.
Van der Ven is out of line, so Bill Lawrence gets the slipstream for a little bit before Rosgen crosses back to make those 2 side by side on the brakes into turn 5. Who's going to be the winner there? Anyone who can get the drive up the hill. Van der Ven has the inside, has his nose in front, holds on to second place. Bill Lawrence couldn't get it done that time as Kopitisch right behind him. John Morgan has just been content to ride along in 5th with this train so far. I think he's got the calmest head on his shoulders of all 5 of these drivers who are going to be battling for the win in a couple laps time.
It's all going to come to a head here. You can feel the tension beginning to build up in this little field of cars. Only 5 of them fighting for the lead, but these 5 cars, they are driving like their lives are depending on it here, as Lawrence continues to try to hunt down Jos Van der Ven. Will he make a lunge into Canada corner? He's close enough to maybe try it, but he's going to be patient. He's going to not make it this time. Jos Van der Ven continues to try to find a way to work around to get up to Stefan Rosgen. And I have been noticing that 167 machine really hasn't been the best through Canada corner. Usually it loses quite a bit of ground to the cars behind them when coming through there. What do you think is the reason for that, David?
Well, it just has to be something in the driving style, in the cockpit as well. Just could be, doesn't react so well putting the power down across the curbs. Who knows? Rosgen troubled into turn 1. Van der Ven followed along and was not close enough. Bill Lawrence runs in 3rd. Give another shout out to Bob Kern, who's now up into 8th place. That's 16 positions gained. And he's leading a little train that's 8th, 9th and 10th battle over the final spots in the top 10. He's got Roberto De Filippis with him still, Richard Coulomb riding along. And De Filippis has just set his fastest lap of the race on his way to just squeeze down the inside into turn 1, using the pit exit and then some to go side by side to try and take 8th place back. And that gives Richard Coulomb a great look. Let's Joel Martin and Jack Turner in the background join up as well. So now it's 5 cars in this battle. Again, plenty of battles, not just for the lead, although that battle for the lead is fantastic to watch. But everyone having a bit of a go here in the last race of the season in 60+ racing adventures.
Kern still holding the line as he comes down into turn number 5. Robert De Filippis runs a little wide, but holds his own around the outside. So Kern up into 8th place, a whopping 15 spots now, but 16 if he can get around the 52 machine. That is absolutely phenomenal from Bob Kern to be able to work his way up so much after not even getting the qualifying time in.
Yeah, we're not 100% sure what prevented Bob Kern from getting a qualifying lap in. He definitely tried. He did an outlap and was on a flying lap, but there was not time left in the session. He left it just a little bit too late, which is unfortunate, but what it has given him is plenty of opportunity to race and race hard, trying to work his way back up the field. Got De Filippis in front of him, Bob Kern and Richard Coulomb here. Coulomb right in the slipstream there, pulls to what's going to be the outside of the Canada corner, and well, they're all going to close up. So De Filippis has compromised his line just a little bit coming into Canada corner, and here comes Coulomb around the outside at Bill Mitchell Bend. That's an interesting move if ever you've seen one. Another car going to try and come through, but he's around. The two collide. Joel Martin and Jack Turner collide before the final corner. Here comes a replay of that one, and I think it's just been a little bit optimistic trying to come around the outside of Bill Mitchell Bend there. You watch from the innocent party, and he's got nowhere to go. Comes up unsettled over the hill, sideways, and then collected. Both of them, that's going to be quite big damage. That was a nose into the side pod, and he doesn't jump into the pit lane. He's missed the pit entry. What is going on there? We look back up to the front of the race though. Rostron leads from Van der Ven, from Bill Lawrence. John Morgan and Leroy Coppage have lost out. Oh, John Morgan loses out big, gets balked by the traffic. It's the number 96 car in there, I think. Or it might have been Wally Molesby, the number 98, who knows, but he was not expecting which way the traffic went. That's compromised John Morgan massively, and he might now be out of the slipstream. For the last 3 laps, it might be Rostron, Van der Ven and Bill Lawrence, unless these 3 fight too hard and Morgan and Coppage can rejoin. That has cost Morgan dearly having to check up behind the traffic.
You know, that latest incident actually has just given us another thing that we never really discussed about for this whole race, is those curves. They are pretty bumpy, and what I saw in that accident was the front end. The reason why it got so loose was because the front end of the car lifted completely up and came down on the grass. These drivers are really driving over some of those exit curves and some of these corners. They are really going to need to watch out for that, because if the front end of these cars picks up, it's just over 1,000 pounds. So these cars, incredibly light, so easy to unsettle them as you go over the curbing. We've already seen it a couple times in this race and the last one. And these lead field, they have been getting unnervingly close.
Morgan and Coppage have caught a lucky break, and they have managed to rejoin what I'm going to call the peloton for the lead of the race. And that lead of the race is Van der Ven trying to go around the outside of Rostron into turn 1. Move successfully made. 3 laps to go when they crossed the line that time, and that shows on your graphics. Van der Ven, Rostron, Lawrence, Morgan, Coppage, your field at the moment. Rostron definitely in the outfield there, coming out of turn 3.
John Morgan and Leroy Coppage have closed in immediately. You said that they might fight too hard up front here and allow them to close on in. Well, that is exactly what has just happened. We're back to a 5-car scrap for the lead here. Can Jos Van der Ven hold them off? He's got to do it for 2.5 more laps. I'm not quite sure he'll be able to, honestly. Stefan Roskin has been extremely aggressive this race. So has Bill Lawrence.
Yeah, and all of these guys with some reasonable results in race 1 have that in the bank to try and go one better in race 2. The way the rounds work here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures, we have 2 races, and your championship result is your best of the 2 races. The points you take is your best result from the night. So if you have a good race in race 1, you just got to go one better in race 2 because you have those points in the bank as your best result. It really lets these drivers fight hard in race 2 and fight hard for the lead they will. Roston has his nose in front, but Van de Ven has the inside into Canada corner. They give plenty of room, which is fantastic to see. Van de Ven able to defend though, because Roston was not getting the power down quick enough down the outside. Lets Lawrence close in as well, and Van de Ven pushes very, very wide through the final corner. He built out a couple of car lengths gap, but he's lost all of that advantage through the final corner, missed the apex, rolled out of the throttle to try and get the car back underneath him and not go on the grass, but that's cost him, and Roston is clear before the braking zone into turn 1. Can Bill Lawrence follow through? I don't think he can, so only costs Van de Ven 1 spot. But if he makes that same mistake on the last lap coming through that corner, it's what might cost him the lead of the race. 2 laps to go, he can't afford a mistake like that again.
That is very, very possible. And Stefan Rosgen, he is really going to need to put the power down if he wants to keep Jos Van de Ven behind him. How patient will it be? He's not being patient at all. He's going to go 2 wheels, all 4 wheels into the grass, trying to get around him for the lead. That did not work at all. He gets forced off the track. Lawrence goes up in a second, but he's going to overdrive turn number 5 and sacrifice his exit as well.
Wow. The nose of Jos Van de Ven was almost in that gap as Roston closed it, and all 4 wheels in the grass trying to hold on to it was Van de Ven. He was very, very fortunate there because we've always seen when you try and keep your foot planted in the grass, it can go wrong in these cars. Roston, that might have been a little bit cheeky of him closing that gap when it looked like Van de Ven was coming, and he probably would have seen it in his mirrors. Bit of a late move, but no damage done. Van de Ven still in the train, still in the slipstream of Bill Lawrence, who gets the slipstream from Stefan Roston. It's going to be the white flag last lap when they cross the start-finish line this time, and that's when it's going to count, and that's when Van de Ven will not lift out if a move like that is pulled. 5 cars in a train coming through the final section of corners before we start the final lap, and any of them could win here in the season finale of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Big oversteer there from Bill Lawrence coming out of the final corner. He'll hold on to it, drop into the slipstream normally.
It's all coming to a head here, just as I predicted. John Van de Ven right on the back end of him. He's going to actually stay in behind that 17 machine. A little bit of a weave from both of them. They all go to the left side of the racetrack as they slam the brakes down into turn number 1 for the final time in the season. Jos Van de Ven, he's closing rapidly to the back of Bill Lawrence. Can he make a move? It might have to be down to the turn number 5.
And Nolan, you don't need a particularly big crystal ball to predict great racing at Road America in some draft cars like this. Bill Lawrence is right underneath the rear wing of Stefan Roston. Jos Van de Ven is right there as well. They pull out side by side, so Roston's going to try and defend the inside. Bill Lawrence around the outside, and Jos Van de Ven sitting in third, trying to judge which way to go. I think Bill Lawrence has not made that work around the outside, and now Roston tries to stick his nose down the inside. It's not going to work this time. It's all going to come down to Canada corner and the run out of the final corner up the hill on the final lap here this time. This is going to be nail-biting stuff. From here, it's almost full throttle all the way to Canada corner. Plenty of downforce on these cars. As you mentioned, very, very light indeed. Sort of entry-level ladder feeder single-seaters. Roston going to do everything he can to weave around, try and break the slipstream. It's not going to work because Bill Lawrence is right there. And Jos Van de Ven, 7/10 off the lead, needed to be a bit closer than that. John Morgan in 4th. Coppage in 5th for the moment. Here we go for the lead. Roston defending the inside. Lawrence tries to go around the outside. Runs out of room. He's oh so close, and those two battling brought Jos Van de Ven, the Flying Dutchman, into the picture. Final braking zone. Jos Van de Ven, bold bowled down the inside of Bill Lawrence. This is a battle for second, but I think it's compromised both of their runs to try and catch Stefan Rostjan. It's a drag race up the hill, and it's all about who grabs the slipstream from Stefan Rostjan. It's going to be Bill Lawrence, and John Morgan tries to make a run to the line as well. Does not quite pip Jos van der Ven. It's a drag race in the lead pack once again, but your winner is Stefan Rostjan. Bill Lawrence grabs second. Jos van der Ven is third. Means he doesn't improve on his best result from race 2. John Morgan so nearly took that third spot away from him, but he gets fourth. Coppage fifth to the line. Nail-biting stuff, Nolan. Couple more cars, couple more battle packs still to come across the line.
And in the battle for 9th place will be Roberto de Felipas to get the win for 9th place, even though Bob Kern stuck the nose out. We've also got the battle for position 13. They're going to be side by side down to the can of the corner. Fred McIntosh, he's going to go through and pick up 13th place from Graham Healy. And this is going to be right down to the wire as well. They're still side by side with Gianni Respaldo behind them and Paul Stump fighting with them as well.
Good run out of the final corner for Fred McIntosh. Healy's going to need a monster of a draft, but Gianni Respaldo runs onto the grass in the final corner. That lets Paul Stump hold on to 14th. It's not going to be enough draft from Graham Healy to get past Fred McIntosh. Leif Hellberg, Bill McCaw battling up ahead of that as well. So we watch another car come towards the end of the lap. An amazing 18 laps of racing we've had. Another drag race to the line up the hill. And the winner there's going to be the 76 car in that battle. Carl Bogle dragging along another competitor to the checkered flag. Another fascinating non-stop action 18 laps in race 2 at Road America. We're going to go to those finishing results now. And your winner in race 2, from 4th on the grid, Stefan Rostjan, ahead of Bill Lawrence. And then, finest of margins, 2nd to 4th place, Bill Lawrence ahead of Jos van der Ven, ahead of John Morgan. Leroy Coppage in the fray there as well, right until the end. Kenneth Duma in a little bit of a no man's land, 6th place. Same for David Riley, but Roberto De Felipas in 8th place led home another battle, with Bob Kern in 9th, Richard Coulomb in 10th.
Brent Spring rounded it off in 11th place with another bit of a no man's land. Same with John Unsey, Fred McIntosh, and Graham Healy. They were in an extremely close battle as well for 13th place. Paul Stump and PJ Sally fought it up 15th and 16th. Paul Stump did win out in that one. Gianni Respaldo in 17th with Carl Bogle in 18th, Leif Hellberg in 19th, and Bill McCaw in 20th.
And then rounding out the tail of the field, the last car on the lead lap in 21st, Bruce Granheim, Wally Molesby, Louis Cannell, Richard Varley, and Ralph Kemmerer finishing one lap off the lead. And then a couple cars, the walking wounded in some retirements here of Joel Martin, Jack Turner, Larry Thomas, Gerard Florison, and Kenneth Baldwin in 30th. A couple more cars from here. It's just retirements and DNSs, Joel Fletcher and Mark Robertson. Well, that is how they finished in race 2. And what we are going to do now is have a couple words with some of our podium position drivers. And we'll start with race winner Stefan Rostjan. When we spoke with you after race 1, we said, can you go one better in race 2? Can you improve? And in the end, you've managed to grab a win in the final race of this season of 60 plus racing adventures, and you had to fight for it all race.
Yes, really, this was a very tough race, and I couldn't drive away, and nobody made a mistake behind me. So that was changing positions till the end, and it was very exhausting.
And what a battle it was. 5 cars stuck together, all 18 laps. How do you try and set up that final lap to stop the cars behind, getting a great run at you and overtaking you. It must be so hard to lead from the front when the draft is so powerful.
Yeah, what you can do is you can take the inside line and try to defend, and then it's just about how far the opponent is coming. He has more than a half car length. He can take the corner as he wants, and yeah, that's a little bit tricky.
Well, we've had 12 rounds of action in 60 plus racing adventures. RaceSpot covers 3, the start, the middle, and the end. But how many of the races have you been able to attend overall? Is there any tracks in this season that you really enjoyed? So obviously to get a win at Road America is nice, but there's plenty of other opportunities for a win, right?
Yeah, we have some good tracks and some not so good tracks, and this one here, normally I would say it's not suited for this car because you have so much draft, but the flow is so nice here that it is fun. Nevertheless, I did not like Monza for it. What I do like is the little club tracks with the bumps and these very technical tracks.
Well, we've seen you in contention for this championship before. This season, it seems like that's not been the case. But looking forward to the next season of 60 Plus Racing Adventures, we're going to see you at the front of the field trying to become champion once again.
You never know. I will do my best, and let's see what happens.
Well, congratulations on your win in this race. Congratulations on your season overall. Thanks so much for coming in to have a word with us. We asked you if there was anyone you wanted to thank after the first race. Has that changed after race 2?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Alright, congratulations once again. There's your winner, Stefan Rostjan. We'll move on to the second place finisher in race 2. And that was Bill Lawrence. Nolan Rempel, I'll let you speak with him.
Now, Bill, you came away with a very impressive drive. Started 5th place, ended up working up 3 spots to finish in 2nd place, just 4 tenths behind Stefan Roskin, and less than a tenth away from Jos van de Ven. It was an extremely intense race for you, I can imagine, trying to work your way up and stay with the lead field.
Yes, Nolan. My mic might be broken up here. Sorry about that. But yes, it was intense. A lot of fun.
Yeah, no worries from us on that one. But, Bill, we saw, especially in the closing laps, it got extremely close. You know, we even saw some drivers went and were being pushed offline just a little bit in some of the corners and even down some of the longer drafting straights. What was your reaction kind of watching and being involved in the kind of racing that we saw in, you know, the final 5 or so laps of the race?
Well, the way I view that is nearing the close of the race, we're all going to take more chances. So they push somebody offline, not intentionally, but to get an edge. And so we all have to be very careful about our brake points and gearing going through there because we're nose to tail. But it's to be expected.
And it has no doubt been an extremely thrilling season right from start to finish. And you unfortunately were not in necessarily a championship contending spot this season. But despite all of this, you did put up an extremely impressive drive in the final round here today. Do you think that maybe going into future seasons, we could see you eventually contending for a season championship?
Yes, Nolan. I have one championship under my belt. I only raced 6 times this year due to summer vacations, but in those 6 races I had 5 wins and another podium, so I'm happy with that.
And before we let you go to celebrate with the other guys about the podium spot, do you have anybody that you would like to shout out for us today on RaceSpotTV?
My fellow teammates on Team Morgan, great team, very supportive. The admins here, all of the admins do a great job. You guys for your coverage, it's awesome. So I can't wait to play it back and see it again. Thanks for the great season and hope to see you all next season.
And thank you, Bill, for taking the time to join us here today.
Bye for now.
Well, thanks for handling that one, Nolan. We move on to our third place finisher in race 2, Jos van der Ven, and to your understanding, and to ours as well, season champion. How does that feel?
Well, of course, I'm very happy. I never won a season in the Pro Mazda. I won the first season, but that was in the Renault. So this is my first victory.
And for that, we all congratulate you from RaceSpotTV, and obviously all season long you've fought well for that, and you put on a good showing here in the final round as well with 2 podiums from 2 races. I think at some of the races I've seen here in 60 plus, we've had cars, about 20 cars or so. 35 took the start in race 1 for this round. Has that been typical of this season? Is this league really growing and going from strength to strength?
Well, the strength is growing, that's for sure, and I think the competitors also, because last 10 or so races we were about with 30 racers.
And with more drivers, obviously brings more competition, and that adds more to your win in this season. I think that the level of competition continues to ramp up, while at the same time I think has stayed pretty friendly and very a lot of people speak well of this league, which is nice to hear. Thinking about just this race and race 2 though, I mean, 3rd place after starting on pole, not so disappointing, but the top 5 pack in this race all race long swapping positions.
Well, I think Road America is a pretty easy track to drive, so I think you can make mistakes here. So the top is very broad. There were about 6 or so guys that were fighting for the victory. So yeah, it's difficult to stay in pole and in first position.
And Stefan Rostjan beat you to the win in this race. Do you think if you try and defend this title, he's going to be your biggest competition next time?
Well, I'm not sure. Bill Lawrence is also very good, and there are a few new guys that are also very fast.
And more broadly about the series, if you had to describe the racing and the community in this series to someone who might be watching right now on RaceSpotTV, how would you say it?
Well, of course, this is a very friendly league with all drivers above 60. There are even some guys with above the 70s. So I think we learned a lot in life. So that's why the competition is fair and square.
We're watching on screen right now a few of your little highlights in this race, and one of them, you're coming down towards the left-hand braking zone after going underneath the cheese bridge, and it looks like Rostjan might have just squeezed you onto the grass. One little off-track excursion for you there. How did you see that one?
Yeah, he probably didn't see me, but I was already next to him, so he had to give me a little bit more room, but he didn't see me, I guess.
Well, going to congratulate you once again on finishing on the podium in race 2, but with what we suspect might be a season championship here across 12 rounds in 60 plus racing adventures. Anyone you need to thank now that you think you're champion?
Yeah, like I said in the first race, I want to thank every racer, every driver in this league. And of course my family, my wife, who also is very supportive. And I think, of course, the organizers of the leagues. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much for speaking to us once again, and hopefully we'll see you again next season in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Well, there we are, Nolan. Fantastic 2 races in 60 Plus Racing Adventures here at Road America. Gave us something to talk about non-stop every single minute, every single lap.
Oh, absolutely. That racing was absolutely phenomenal. You know, especially the final laps in the last race of the season, race number 2 here at Road America. That was something else, let me tell you. That was, I'm still shaking a little bit from what we were witnessing there.
Yeah, indeed, and I hope next season in 60 Plus Racing Adventures shows us exactly the same. RaceSpotTV typically broadcasts the opening round, one of the rounds in the middle, and then the season finale like we've done here, and hopefully that will be the case once again. If you don't want to miss out on any of that racing, then make sure you follow RaceSpotTV on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you are watching. We thank you so much for watching. I'm David Haynes, Nolan Rempel alongside me. Istvan Baloff, TrackCams22.com gets it done for us as well. And we'll say thank you so much for tuning into this very, very exciting series. And we'll see you again on RaceSpot TV soon. Good night.